The car died with a pathetic sputter, a metallic sigh that echoed the finality of Aria's own exhaustion. One moment. The headlights were cutting a weak path through the cloying October fog. The next, she was plunged into an oppressive, ink-black silence. The only light was the mocking glow of the full moon, a silver coin veiled behind layers of mist. No, 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 she muttered, her breath fogging the windshield. She turned the key again. Nothing. A second time. Just a defeated click. Her phone had died an hour ago, the GPS leading her onto this god-forsaken mountain pass before abandoning her completely. Silverwood Pass. The name had sounded poetic on the map. In reality, it was a tomb of skeletal trees and suffocating quiet. Her client meeting in Seattle had been a disaster. The drive home was supposed to be a retreat, a few hours of loud music and self-pity. Instead, it had become a nightmare. Aria Chen, a 25-year-old freelance graphic designer, was not an outdoors person. Her natural habitat was a world of RGB codes and ergonomic chairs. The most dangerous thing she usually encountered was a looming deadline. She slammed her palms against the steering wheel, a useless gesture. Giving in to the rising panic felt like a surrender she wasn't ready to make. There had to be a town, a gas station, a single house with a light on somewhere down this road. With a deep, shaky breath, she pushed the door open. The cold air was a physical slap, sharp with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. It was a wild, untamed smell that made the hairs on her arms stand up. She pulled her thin jacket tighter, the fabric offering little comfort against the biting chill. Walking it was, then. She didn't know how long she walked. The crunch of her boots on the gravel shoulder, the only sound in the universe. The fog swirled around her ankles, hiding the forest floor. It was in this disoriented state that she sought a faint, trickling sound. Water. A small stream cut across a break in the trees. It seemed like a shortcut, a way to cut a bend in the winding road. A stupid idea. Her rational mind screamed, but the thought of spending one less minute in this cold, lonely darkness was too tempting. The moment her boots splashed into the shallow water, something shifted. It wasn't a sound or a sight, but a feeling, a bizarre, electric hum vibrated up from the soles of her feet, coursing through her entire body. Her heart hammered against her ribs, not with fear, but with a strange, sudden vitality. The world, once muted by fog, snapped into high definition. She could hear the rustle of a mouse in the undergrowth 50 feet away, smell the sap bleeding from a pine tree far up the slope. It was overwhelming, impossible. And then she heard the other sound, a low growl that resonated in her bones. She froze, her gaze darting into the shadows, a pair of eyes, glowing with a faint, predatory light, stared back, then another pair, and another, soon. She was surrounded. They were wolves, larger than any she had ever seen in pictures, their shoulders bunched with muscle, their lips curled back to reveal gleaming teeth. Primal fear, cold and absolute, finally broke through her shock. She turned and ran, not back toward the road, but deeper into the woods, fueled by pure adrenaline. Branches whipped at her face, tearing at her clothes. Her lungs burned. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. She stumbled into a small clearing and her back hit something hard and cold. A wall. It was an old, crumbling stone structure, covered in moss. One of the wolves lunged, its massive form a blur of dark fur. Aria screamed, flinging her hands out to brace herself against the wall. But she didn't just brace herself. As her palms made contact with the ancient stones, a surge of raw, untamed energy exploded from her. It wasn't a push. It was an impossible burst of force she didn't know she possessed. The stone wall, which had stood for what looked like centuries, didn't just crack, it shattered. A section 10 feet wide collapsed inward with a deafening roar of crumbling rock and splintering earth. The wolves skidded to a halt, whining in confusion and fear. The sound of the wall's destruction echoed through the forest. A thunderclap that seemed to shake the very ground. It was an alarm, a summons. And then he appeared. He emerged from the darkness, a shadow given form. He was a wolf, but he made the others look like pups. He was colossal, his fur the color of a starless midnight, his body a symphony of lethal grace. But it was his eyes that stole the breath from her lungs. They were not the pale yellow of the others. They were the color of molten amber, burning with an ancient intelligence and a power that radiated in palpable waves. The moment their eyes met, the world tilted on its axis. It was a lightning strike to her soul, a violent, undeniable recognition, a single. Silent words screamed through her mind, a word that was not her own, a word that felt like destiny itself, mate. The giant wolf's body convulsed. A low, possessive growl rumbled from his chest, a sound so deep it vibrated through the ground and up into her bones. A single word echoed back in her head, this time his, a primal, possessive claim that shook her to her core. Mine. Aria was paralyzed, caught in the inferno of his gaze. The force pulling her toward him was stronger than gravity, more fundamental than fear. Then, the impossible happened again before her stunned eyes. The creature began to change. Bones cracked and reformed with sickening snaps. Fur receded, revealing pale skin that seemed to glow in the moonlight. The monstrous form twisted and reshaped itself, elongating, rising. Within seconds, a man stood where the wolf had been. He was tall, impossibly so, with broad shoulders that strained the fabric of a simple black t-shirt. His hair was as black as the wolf's fur, wild and untamed. His face was all sharp angles and stark beauty, a face carved from granite and fury. A jagged scar ran from his left collarbone down his chest, a pale white line against his tanned skin, and his eyes, they were the same, molten amber, now fixed on her with an expression of raw, unadulterated shock and a terrifying possessiveness. He was completely, utterly naked, yet he stood with the unapologetic power of a king in his own court. He took a step toward her, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that was both a threat and a caress. At last, he breathed, the words hanging in the cold air like a prophecy fulfilled. After 32 years, I found you. The air rushed out of Aria's lungs. The forest, the wolves, the impossible man, it all spun into a dizzying vortex of black. Her knees buckled, and she knew no more. As her consciousness faded, the last thing she heard was his roar, a sound of pure, untamed rage that ripped through the night. Anyone who touches her dies. Aria's first thought was that she was dreaming. She had to be. The ceiling above her was high and vaulted, made of dark, heavy wood. The bed she lay in was enormous. A king-sized monstrosity with 4 posts carved from dark stone into the shape of snarling wolves. The sheets were silk, cool and impossibly soft against her skin. A fire crackled merrily in a stone hearth across the room, casting dancing shadows on the tapestries that adorned the walls. It was luxurious, it was gothic, and it was terrifying. She sat up, her head throbbing. Her clothes were gone, replaced by a simple, long-sleeved cotton nightgown. Her muddy boots were nowhere in sight. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw its way up her throat. Good, you're awake. Aria snapped her head toward the voice. A woman stood by the door, her arms crossed. She was tall and athletically built, with sharp, intelligent features and dark hair pulled back in a severe braid. Her eyes were a cool, calculating gray. She wore practical black leather pants and a fitted tunic. She looked like a warrior. "Where am I?" Aria's voice was a hoarse whisper. "Who are you?" "My name is Elena," the woman said, her tone clipped and efficient. "You're in the Black Moon Manor. The Alpha brought you here." "The Alpha." The word felt foreign, cult-like. The memories of the night before crashed back in on her, the wolves, the crumbling wall, the man who had appeared from nowhere. I was in an accident. I need to call someone. I need to go home. Elena's expression didn't soften. This is your home now. As for what you saw, this is a world of werewolves, of shapeshifters, and our alpha, Lucian Blackmoon, believes you are his mate. Aria stared at her, a hysterical laugh bubbling in her chest. Werewolves. You're joking. This is some kind of cult. You've kidnapped me. She swung her legs out of the bed, her bare feet hitting the cold stone floor. I'm leaving. I don't think so. The door creaked open, and he walked in, the man from the forest, Lucian. He was dressed now, in simple black jeans and a dark gray Henley that did little to hide the powerful musculature of his chest and arms. The air in the room instantly grew heavy, charged with an energy that seemed to press down on her, making it hard to breathe. His presence was overwhelming, a physical force that commanded attention, that demanded submission. His amber eyes locked onto hers, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. Aria took a half step back, her bravado evaporating under his intense gaze. I want to go home, she said, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. You have no right to keep me here. He moved toward her, his steps silent and predatory. He stopped just a few feet away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His voice, when he spoke, was a low, dangerous rumble. Go home, he repeated, a dark amusement flickering in his eyes. You have no other home now. You are my mate, the Luna of the Blackmoon pack. I'm not a Luna, she shot back, desperation making her reckless. I don't even know what that is. I'm just a normal person. A flash of something wild and dangerous crossed his face. The amber in his eyes seemed to glow, turning almost red at the edges. The civilized man vanished, and for a second, she saw the wolf looking out at her. You are not normal, he snarled, the sound a gut-wrenching growl. I can smell it on you. Something in your blood, something ancient, something powerful. He saw the disbelief, the terror in her eyes. With a sigh that sounded more like a frustrated growl, he decided to end the debate. You want proof? He closed his eyes. The change was even more jarring up close. She heard the sickening crunch of bone, the tearing of fabric as his body expanded, his human form melting away into the monstrous, beautiful shape of the black wolf. He stood before her, his head nearly level with hers even as he was on all fours, a low rumble vibrating in his chest. Aria screamed, scrambling backward until she hit the wall. This was real. It was all horribly, impossibly real. She bolted for the door, but her body felt strangely sluggish, her legs refusing to obey her panicked commands. It was as if one part of her brain was screaming, run, while another, deeper part, a treacherous, instinctual part, wanted to turn around, to move closer to the magnificent, terrifying beast in the center of the room. He shifted back just as quickly, his ruined clothes falling around him. He didn't seem to notice or care about his nakedness. The mate bond, he said, his voice softer now, but still laced with an unnerving intensity. It's a destined connection of the soul. Your soul recognizes mine, even if your mind refuses to. It's why you can't run from me. He promised to protect her, to keep her safe, but there was one condition. You will stay here, at least until we understand why a human is the destined mate of an alpha. It's never happened before. Just then, the door opened again. A man with warm brown eyes and a calm, steady presence entered. He was broad-shouldered and handsome, but his expression was deeply troubled. He bowed his head slightly to Lucian. Alpha. There's a problem, he said, his voice grave. He glanced at Aria, a flicker of awe and confusion in his eyes. She destroyed the ancient wall, the one at the northern border. It's been protected by an ancient seal for 200 years. No creature should have been able to even crack it, unless... Lucian's gaze snapped back to Aria, his amber eyes wide with a dawning. incredulous realization. He finished the sentence for his friend. Unless it was an alpha of an ancient bloodline. Both men stared at her, not as a victim, not as a human, but as a puzzle, a miracle, an impossibility. Aria leaned against the wall, her legs finally giving out. She slid to the floor, the cold stone seeping through her nightgown, her mind reeling from the impossible words. "What? What have I done?" she whispered to the silent, watching room. Aria's first morning in the Black Moon Manor felt like walking into a medieval fantasy film. Elena, silent and imposing, led her down a grand stone staircase to the main hall. It was a cavernous space with a ceiling so high it was lost in shadows, supported by massive timber beams, a long, dark wood table, capable of seating hundreds, dominated the room, and it was nearly full. Over 200 people, men and women of all age, all with a shared intensity in their eyes, stopped talking the moment she entered. 200 pairs of eyes turned to stare at her. The air crackled with a mixture of raw curiosity, suspicion, and outright hostility. She felt like a mouse thrown into a den of wolves, which, she supposed, was exactly what she was. She could feel their gazes on her skin, judging her, dissecting her. Then, Lucian entered from a side door. The hall fell into a reverent silence. He moved with an innate authority that was breathtaking to witness. Every person in the room lowered their eyes in a gesture of respect. He didn't even seem to notice. His gaze found Aria instantly, a tether pulling her in. He strode to the head of the table, pulling out the chair beside his own, the seat reserved for the Alpha's mate, the Luna. He waited, his expression unreadable, for her to sit. Her heart hammered as she walked the gauntlet of silent stairs and took her place beside him. Breakfast was a tense affair, the silence broken only by the clinking of silverware. Aria felt 100 questions being aimed at her like daggers, just as she thought she might suffocate from the pressure. A voice cut through the tension. "Alpha." Aria looked up. A woman with fiery red hair and striking, sharp features had risen from her seat. She was beautiful in a fierce, predatory way, and her body was honed like a weapon. "With all due respect," the woman said, her voice carrying a clear challenge, "we cannot accept a human as our Luna. She is weak. She has no power to protect the pack, no understanding of our traditions. She is a liability." A low murmur of agreement rippled through a faction of the crowd. Aria's cheeks burned with humiliation. Lucian didn't even look at the woman. He slowly placed his fork down, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent hall. When he spoke, his voice was as cold as glacial ice. "My mate's position is not up for debate, Celine," he said, the name dripping with dismissal. A wave of invisible pressure, his alpha aura washed over the room, making Aria's breath catch. "I do not require your opinion, or anyone else's. On the destiny chosen for me, anyone who disrespects her will answer to me as a traitor." The murmuring stopped instantly. Celine sat down, her face a mask of fury and humiliation, but the resentment lingered in the air, thick and poisonous. Later, as Aria was attempting to make herself invisible in a corner of the grand library, a cheerful voice startled her. "Don't let Celine get to you." Aria turned to see a young woman with a bright open face and a cascade of brown curls. She had a friendly, disarming smile. "I'm Kira," she said, plopping down onto the armchair opposite Aria. "My brother is Caspian, Lucian's beta." "Aria," she replied weakly. "I know," Kira grinned. "Everyone knows. Look, about Celine. She's just angry because she and Lucian were involved for about 5 years. She was convinced she was going to be the next Luna." Aria's stomach twisted into a tight knot. They were a couple. "Sort of," Kira said with a wave of her hand. "It was never serious for him. Everyone knew he was just waiting for his true mate, for you, Sin." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "He never truly loved her, not like the way he looks at you. It's like he's seeing the sun for the first time. The words sent a confusing flutter through Aria's chest. Later that afternoon, Caspian appeared to summon her to Lucian's office. The room was a stark contrast to the rest of the manor. It was modern and sleek, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the vast, wild forest. A massive desk was covered in architectural blueprints and financial reports. Lucien stood by the window, his back to her. He didn't turn around when she entered. "This pack is not just a collection of families living in the woods. Aria," he said, his voice all business. "We operate in your world, too." He gestured to the papers on his desk. Black Moon Industries. We're one of the largest real estate and technology development firms on the West Coast. Aria's jaw dropped. The terrifying, half-wild man from the forest was a billionaire CEO. He finally turned to face her, his expression serious. "I need you to understand what you've walked into. There are enemies outside these walls, other packs, other creatures. Who would see us fall? That is why this pack values strength above all else, and it is why they see you as a weakness." He closed the distance between them, his sheer size and intensity making the large office feel small and claustrophobic. "I need you to stay here for 30 days, he stated. "Not as a request, but a command. There are 3 reasons. 1, the mate bond must be completed. If it's left unfulfilled, it will cause both of us immense physical pain, and eventually, it will weaken us to the point of death. 2, we need to investigate the source of the power you used to destroy that wall. And 3, his eyes darkened, I need to protect you from the threats you don't yet understand." He was standing so close now she could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes. His gaze was heated, possessive, and it made her blood sing in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. "I know you're scared," he murmured, his voice dropping to that low, intimate rumble. "But the safest place for you in this world is right here, by my side." Her heart was beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She tried to muster some of her earlier defiance. "I'm not a possession for you to own." A slow, dangerous smile touched his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. "No," he agreed softly, his gaze dropping to her mouth. "You are not a possession. You are the one precious thing in my world that I would kill to protect." Meanwhile, miles away, in a dark room deep within another forest, a figure stared into a scrying pool. The water swirled, showing an image of Aria's face, a cold, chilling voice, devoid of all warmth, echoed in the darkness. "So, she has finally surfaced, Aldrich's daughter, after 25 years in hiding. It seems it is time to finally extinguish that traitorous bloodline." Lucien's idea of protection involved throwing her to the wolves, literally. He had decided Aria needed to learn how to defend herself. Her instructor was a man named Marcus, a mountain of a man with a face crisscrossed with old scars and eyes that had seen 1,000 battles. He was the pack's head combat trainer, and he did not believe in coddling. Her first training session was a public humiliation. The training grounds were a large, open dirt arena behind the manor. A dozen other pack members were training alongside her. Aria, in her borrowed sweats and sneakers, felt clumsy and fragile next to their fluid. Powerful movements. Marcus tried to teach her basic stances, blocks, and strikes. Her body refused to cooperate. And of course, Celine had deliberately signed up for the same session. "Let me show the Luna how it's done, Marcus," Celine purred, stepping into the ring with Aria. Before Marcus could object, Celine moved. She was a blur of motion. 1 second she was 10 feet away. The next she had swept Aria's legs out from under her. Aria landed hard on her back. The air knocked from her lungs before she could even process what had happened. Celine's boot was pressed lightly against her throat. The fight had lasted less than 3 seconds. "Is this our Luna?" Celine's voice dripped with contempt. loud enough for everyone to hear, a fragile, little human who can't even defend herself. How will she defend the pack? Tears of pain and shame pricked at Aria's eyes. "You dare!" The word was a roar. Lucian stood at the edge of the arena, his face a thunderous mask of pure fury. His alpha aura slammed into the training grounds with the force of a physical blow. Everyone, including Marcus and Celine, instinctively bowed their heads, averting their eyes. He stalked toward Celine, the ground seeming to tremble with each step. "Did you just raise a hand to my mate?" Celine was visibly shaking. "Alpha, I was just testing her." Testing her, he snarled, the wolf just beneath the surface of his skin, or humiliating her. "Alpha," Marcus interjected, stepping between them. "A brave move. This is necessary. If the Luna is to gain the pack's respect, she must earn it. She must prove she is not a weakness." Lucian's glare could have melted steel, but before he could retort, Aria pushed herself up. Her knee was scraped and bleeding. Her cheek was beginning to swell, but her eyes were bright with a newfound determination. "Don't punish her." "Lucian," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. She wiped a trickle of blood from her lip with the back of her hand. "He's right. She's right. I'm weak, but I won't be for long." She looked directly at Marcus. "Train me again. Harder this time. I will not be a burden." A flicker of surprise, quickly followed by a rush of fierce pride, crossed Lucian's face. That night, he came to her room. He didn't knock, just entered as if he owned the place, which, she supposed, he did. He carried a first aid kit. Without a word, he knelt before her where she sat on the edge of the bed and began to clean the scrapes on her knee. His touch was surprisingly gentle, his large, calloused fingers sending sparks across her skin. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken emotions. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" she asked softly. "Why is this pack's strength so important to you?" He paused, dabbing an antiseptic wipe on her knee. He didn't look up. "Because I know what happens when a pack is weak." His voice was low, haunted. 10 years ago. My family, my father, my mother, my little sister, they were murdered, slaughtered in a coup led by a rogue alpha named Aldrich Shadowfang. Aria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I was 22, he continued, his voice tight with remembered pain. "I was forced to become alpha overnight, to lead a broken, terrified pack. Aldrich wanted to claim this territory. He saw my father as a weak leader, so he ripped him apart in front of me. He finally looked up, and the raw agony in his amber eyes made her heart ache. I've spent the last 10 years building Black Moon into the most powerful, most ruthless pack in North America. I swore I would never be weak again. I swore I would never trust anyone again." His gaze softened as it rested on her face. "Until I found you. Meeting you. It was the first time in a decade I felt like I could breathe again." Impulsively, she reached out and rested her hand on his cheek. "Lucian, I'm so sorry about your family." He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing for a brief moment. He captured her hand, holding it against his face. "Don't be sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the gift the goddess gave me to heal the scars." He gently wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a careful, tender hug. Later that night, sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, it was filled with strange, violent nightmares. She saw a man with silver hair and eyes that were a startling, familiar shade of gold, battling a giant black wolf in a sea of fire. The silver-haired man's voice echoed in her dream, filled with a desperate anguish. "My daughter, forgive me." Aria shot up in bed, her heart pounding, the phantom voice still ringing in her ears. She didn't understand what it meant, but a cold dread settled deep in her stomach. The full moon assembly was the most sacred night of the month for the Black Moon Pack. It was a time of tradition, of community, and tonight It was the night the Alpha would officially present his Luna. Elena helped Aria prepare, her usual stern demeanor replaced by a quiet reverence for the occasion. She helped Aria into a simple, elegant white gown that seemed to shimmer in the low light. Around her neck, Elena fastened a silver pendant carved with the image of a howling wolf before a full moon, the symbol of the Luna. "Tonight is important," Elena said, her voice softer than Aria had ever heard it. "When the pack accepts you, you will officially be one of us." Kira bounced into the room, her eyes wide with excitement. "You look amazing, like the moon goddess herself. Everyone is waiting. This is the biggest night in years." Lucian was waiting for her at the bottom of the staircase. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that made him look less like a wild alpha and more like a dark, dangerous god. When he saw her, he stopped breathing. The adoration in his eyes was so potent, so raw, that it made Aria's knees feel weak. He took her hand, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. "Beautiful," he breathed, the word a reverent prayer. He led her outside to the moon clearing, a natural amphitheater in the heart of the forest. Over 300 pack members were gathered in a large circle, their faces upturned to the brilliant full moon. A bonfire crackled in the center, sending sparks up into the night sky. Lucian led her into the center of the circle. The air was thick with anticipation. He raised their joined hands. "Tonight, under the gaze of the goddess," his voice boomed, filled with an authority that commanded the forest itself, "I present to you my mate, my Luna, Aria." He turned to her, his eyes blazing with love and pride. The second part of the ritual was the blood bond. He produced a small, ornate silver knife. With a quick, practiced motion, he made a small cut on his own palm. A few drops of his blood welled up, dark and crimson in the firelight. He held his palm out to her. "Drink," he commanded softly, "and our souls will be linked." Aria's hand trembled as she reached for his. She knew this was it, the point of no return. She was accepting this life, this man, this destiny. She leaned forward to complete the ritual. "Thwip!" The sound was soft, almost lost in the crackle of the fire, but it was followed by a sharp, guttural gasp from Lucian. Aria looked up in confusion. An arrow, its shaft black and its head a-gleaming, wicked silver, was protruding from Lucian's shoulder. He had moved at the last second, shielding her with his own body. The arrow had been aimed directly at her heart. Chaos erupted. From the shadows of the trees, figures emerged. They were wolves, but their fur was matted, their eyes wild and crazed. Rogues, outcasts, an army of them poured into the clearing. "Black moon falls tonight," a voice snarled from the darkness. The pack warriors reacted instantly, shifting into their wolf forms and meeting the charge with furious roars. The clearing became a maelstrom of claws and teeth, a brutal, bloody battle under the silver light of the moon. In the confusion, two of the rogue wolves broke through the lines and grabbed Aria. One clamped a hand over her mouth, while the other held a knife to her throat. They started dragging her back into the trees, intending to use her as a hostage. Fear, white-hot and absolute, surged through her, but it was mixed with something else. Rage, a furious, protective rage for Lucian, who was staggering, the silver in the arrow already poisoning his system. A rage for this pack, her pack, that was being attacked. The rogue holding the knife pressed it harder against her skin, drawing a thin line of blood. "Don't move, or the Luna dies," he yelled. And then, something inside Aria snapped. Instinct took over. She threw her hand up to block the knife as her palm moved. A brilliant, blinding wave of golden energy erupted from her, a silent explosion of pure power. The two rogues holding her were thrown backward as if hit by a truck, slamming into trees 10 meters away with bone-shattering force. They didn't get up. The entire battlefield fell silent. Friend and foe alike stared at her, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Aria stood alone in the center of a small clearing, her hand still outstretched, faint golden light still shimmering around her fingertips. Lucian, clutching his wounded shoulder, stared at her, his expression a mixture of profound shock and dawning terror. Aria. The attack was broken. The remaining rogues, seeing their comrades so easily dispatched by an unknown power, turned and fled into the night, but the damage was done. Several pack members lay wounded, and Lucian was hurt, badly. The silver was spreading through his veins, a poison that could kill him. Caspian rushed to his alpha's side, his face grim. "We need to get him to the infirmary. Now." He glanced at Aria, his eyes filled with 100 unasked questions. "Alpha. We can't ignore this anymore. She has alpha blood in her veins, true alpha blood. But the question is, from who?" Lucian gritted his teeth against the pain, his gaze never leaving Aria. He reached out his good hand toward her, his voice weak but filled with an unshakable conviction. "I don't care who she is," he rasped, his eyes locking with hers. "I will protect you, to my last breath." Aria looked from his pale, pain-filled face to her own hand. The source of the impossible power, the life she had known, was gone forever. There was no running from this. Her destiny, and the truth of who she really was here, in this violent, magical, terrifying world. The days following the attack were a blur of anxiety. Lucian's recovery was slow, the silver poison notoriously difficult to purge from a shapeshifter's system. Aria refused to leave his side. She sat by his bed for hours, changing the cold cloths on his forehead when the fever spiked, holding his hand when the pain-filled nightmares took him. In his delirium, he would murmur her name, his grip on her hand tightening possessively. "Don't leave me. Aria, don't you ever leave me." And in those quiet, vulnerable moments, as she watched the powerful alpha reduced to a state of utter dependence, Aria's feelings began to shift. The fear and confusion were still there, but they were being slowly, inexorably replaced by something else, a fierce, protective tenderness. She was falling in love with him. The realization was as terrifying as it was undeniable. On the third day, Caspian and Elena came to the Alpha's chambers with a grim report. "We've been digging into your past," Caspian said to Aria, his tone gentle but serious. "There's no record of a Sarah Chen, your mother, existing anywhere before 25 years ago. It's like she appeared out of thin air." "We found one thing, though," Elena added, holding up a file, a last known address before she moved to the city and had you. A small, abandoned town near the Canadian border, a place called Hollow Creek. Lucian, who had been listening with his eyes closed, pushed himself up against the headboard. He was still pale, but the fire was back in his eyes. "I'm going with you." "Lucian, no!" Aria protested. "You need to rest." "I'm not letting you face this alone," he growled, his voice still raspy, but filled with unyielding resolve. "This concerns my mate. It concerns this pack. I am going." There was no arguing with him. 2 days later, a small convoy of black SUVs left the Black Moon territory. The group was small and efficient. Lucian and Aria, Caspian and Elena, and Marcus and Kira, who had insisted on coming to support her friend. Hollow Creek was a ghost town in the truest sense. Dilapidated buildings sagged under the weight of time and neglect. A lonely wind whistled through broken window panes. It was a place of forgotten stories. They found the house listed in the file easily. It was a small ramshackle cabin on the edge of the woods, slowly being reclaimed by nature. The inside was covered in dust and cobwebs, but as they explored, Caspian noticed that the floorboards in the main room were uneven. Beneath them, they found a hidden cellar. The air in the cellar was stale and smelled of earth and secrets. In the center of the small, dirt-floored room was a single wooden chest. Aria's hands trembled as she lifted the heavy lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of old velvet, was a leather-bound journal, a stack of faded photographs, and a silver necklace. Aria picked up the necklace. The pendant was intricately carved into the shape of a snarling wolf's head intertwined with a crescent moon. Elena let out a sharp, strangled gasp. No, it can't be. That's the crest of the Shadowfang clan. Caspian's face went rigid. Shadowfang, he whispered, the name a curse on his lips, the clan of Aldrich, the monster who murdered the Alpha's family. Every eye in the small cellar turned to Aria, who stood frozen, the damning piece of silver in her hand, with shaking fingers. She opened the journal. The handwriting was her mother's. The first entry was dated 25 years ago. March 15th. It read, "I have no other choice. Aldrich has lost himself to his grief, to his rage. He's drowning in his obsession with power. He has killed so many innocents in his quest to become the High Alpha, the undisputed ruler. I cannot let my daughter grow up in a world of blood and vengeance. I will take Aria away from him. I will use the old magic to seal her memories, to bind the Shadowfang power in her blood. And I will raise her as a human. Far from this world, she will be safe, even if she grows to hate me for it. This is the only way for her to live." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Her mother, Aldrich Shadowfang, the man who had destroyed Lucian's world, the man whose blood ran through her veins. Aria looked up from the journal, her eyes wide with horror. Meeting Lucian's. His face was a mask of stone, completely drained of color. The look in his eyes, it was a devastating cocktail of shock, betrayal, and a pain so profound it stole her breath. "My mother," she choked out, the words feeling like poison in her mouth. "And the man who killed your family. That means Caspian finished the sentence for her, his voice heavy with a terrible, inescapable truth. "It means you are Aldrich Shadowfang's daughter." The silence that followed was absolute, a crushing weight that filled the small, dark cellar. Without a single word, Lucian turned and walked out of the cellar, out of the house, and into the desolate, empty street. He didn't look back. "Lucian," Aria cried, her voice breaking. But he was already gone. Lucian walked until the ghost town was far behind him, plunging deep into the silent, waiting forest. He leaned against an ancient oak, his head thrown back, a silent scream trapped in his chest. The memories he had spent a decade suppressing came roaring back with the force of a tidal wave. He saw his sister, Lily, only 12 years old, her bright, laughing eyes going dim as she died in his arms, her throat torn out by Aldrich's claws. He saw his mother and father, fighting back to back, overwhelmed and ripped apart by the man who called himself a righteous avenger. He remembered the vow he'd made over their bodies, a promise whispered in blood and grief. "I will hunt down every last drop of Shadowfang blood." And now, the last drop of that blood belonged to his mate, the one person destined to be his other half, the woman who had, in a few short weeks, brought light back into his dark, empty world. The wolf inside him raged, a frantic, desperate howl. "She is our mate. Her blood does not matter. She is ours." But the man, the son, was torn. "How can I hold her in my arms?" he thought, his own heart feeling like it was being ripped in two. "How can I love the daughter of the man who destroyed my entire world? To love her, is it a betrayal of my family?" Back in the cabin, Aria had collapsed into Kira's arms, her body racked with sobs that tore from the deepest part of her soul. She was the daughter of a monster, the daughter of her mate's sworn enemy. It was a cruel, twisted joke played by the fates. Elena, surprisingly, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Her voice was uncharacteristically gentle. "Luna, none of us choose the family we are born into." "But I carry his blood," Aria wept. "I carry the blood of the man who ruined his life." "The Alpha is in pain," Caspian said, his expression etched with concern. "But I know him. He loves you. He will not abandon you." But Aria wasn't so sure. How could love possibly overcome a decade of pure, undiluted hatred? Night fell. Lucian finally returned, his face pale and drawn, his eyes shadowed with an inner conflict that was painful to witness. Aria knew she couldn't let this fester. She had to face him. She found him in his office back at the manor, staring out the window into the darkness, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. She took a deep breath, her voice barely a whisper. "I understand if you want to break the bond. I won't blame you." The glass in his hand shattered. He spun around and slammed his fist into the solid oak wall beside him, the wood splintering under the force of the blow. "You think I want to give you up?" he roared, his control finally snapping. "But I'm his daughter." "You are mine," he bellowed, stalking toward her, his eyes blazing with a desperate, "Wildfire, I don't care whose blood runs in your veins, you are not him. Do you understand me? You are not him." Aria stared at him, speechless, tears streaming down her face. He reached her, his hands coming up to cup her face, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. His expression softened, the rage replaced by a raw, aching vulnerability. "I have spent 10 years living in the shadow of my hatred," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I will not lose another day to it. You are the only light I have. Aria, the only thing that feels real." And then he did something that stunned her to her core. Lucian Blackmoon, the powerful, proud alpha, knelt before her. An alpha kneeling was an act of ultimate submission, of ultimate devotion. "I, Lucian Blackmoon, alpha of the Blackmoon Pack, swear to you, before the goddess," he said, his amber eyes locked on hers, filled with a burning sincerity. "I will protect you. I will cherish you, not because of destiny, but because I love you." "And I," Aria sobbed, her heart feeling like it might burst with a painful, overwhelming joy. "I may not know who I am, but I know that I love you, too." He rose to his feet, and his mouth came down on hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was desperate and hungry, a raw claiming that spoke of all the pain, the conflict, the fear, and the undeniable, soul-deep love between them. It was the taste of forgiveness and the promise of a future they would have to fight for. Unseen, in the deep woods bordering the Black Moon territory, a pair of golden eyes watched the light in the Alpha's office window. A low, gravelly voice chuckled in the darkness. "My daughter, she has found her mate, and a powerful one at that. Good, very good. The time is coming to reclaim what is mine. Black Moon, prepare yourself for my vengeance." The morning after their kiss, everything had changed. Lucian made a formal announcement to the pack, standing before them in the great hall with Aria by his side, his hand possessively on the small of her back. His voice had boomed with unshakable authority. "Aria is the daughter of Aldrich Shadowfang," he stated, silencing the gasps of shock with a single, hard glare. "Her bloodline does not change her destiny. She is my mate. She is your Luna. Any insult to her is an insult to me. Any threat to her is a declaration of war on this pack. Is that understood?" The pack, seeing the absolute devotion in their alpha's eyes, roared their assent. Celine and her followers remained silent, their disapproval a palpable force, but they dared not challenge him openly. The bond between Lucian and Aria intensified daily. They could feel each other's emotions now, a pang of his frustration when a business deal went south, a wave of her anxiety before training. Sometimes, when they were close, faint whispers of each other's thoughts would bleed through. But the matter of her power remained. For that, Lucian summoned the pack's oldest and wisest member. Nyx was a witch, an ancient advisor to the Black Moon Alphas for nearly 2 centuries. She was a small, wizened woman with eyes as dark and deep as a starless night. She examined Aria not with instruments, but with her hands, which hovered over Aria's skin, glowing with a faint purple light. "It is as you suspected, Alpha," Nyx said finally, her voice raspy with age. "This is primal Alpha blood, the oldest, most powerful kind, but it is bound, sealed by a blood curse, a powerful one, cast by her mother to protect her." "Can you break it?" Lucian asked impatiently. Nyx shook her head slowly. A blood curse can only be undone by one of the same bloodline, a living one. The unspoken name hung in the air between them. Aldrich. "Then we will train her to control what she has," Lucian declared. Nyx began teaching Aria the basics of channeling her inner energy. The first lessons were a disaster. Aria would concentrate until her head throbbed, but she couldn't produce so much as a spark. "I can't do this," she said in frustration after one particularly fruitless session. Lucian, who had been watching from the doorway, came and stood behind her, his strong arms wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "You can," he murmured into her ear, his voice a soothing rumble. "You're afraid of it. Don't fight it. Embrace it. Welcome it, the way you welcomed me." His presence was a calming anchor. She closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against her back. She reached inside herself, not with fear, but with acceptance. This power was a part of her history, a part of her future with him. She opened her palm. A small, shimmering ball of golden energy materialized above it, warm and vibrant. It was beautiful. Nyx nodded in approval. The mate bond. It strengthens her connection to her own soul, her own power. Keep practicing. That evening, Caspian brought them old pack records, files on Aldrich Shadowfang from before he became a monster. The story they told was a tragedy. 30 years ago, Aldrich had been a respected, just alpha. His descent into madness began when his fated mate, a Luna named Serena, was captured and killed by a fanatical group of human hunters while she was 8 months pregnant. Consumed by grief, Aldrich begged the other alpha packs for help in seeking justice. They refused. Fearing a war with the humans, Lucian's own father had been among those who counseled caution. Driven mad by his loss and their perceived betrayal, Aldrich came to believe that only absolute power could protect those he loved. He became the very thing he once fought against, a tyrant who ruled through fear. His second wife, Sarah Aria's mother, and not his true mate, had been his last link to his humanity, but even she had to flee from the monster he had become. "So, my father wasn't born evil?" Aria asked, her heart aching for the man he could have been, for the family she might have had. "There is no excuse for the murder of innocents," Lucian said, his voice hard, but the rigid hatred in his eyes had been replaced by a grim understanding. His pain does not justify the pain he inflicted. "I know," Aria whispered, "but I can't help but feel sad. For all of them. For Serena, for my mother, for him. They were all victims of a terrible fate." That night, a piercing alarm shrieked through the manor, signaling a breach at the northern border. Lucian and Aria raced to the command center, where a live video feed from a security camera was displayed on a large screen. On the newly repaired ancient wall, a message had been written in blood, the letters stark and horrifying under the security lights. "My dearest daughter, it's time to come home. I am coming for you. A.S." Lucian's arm tightened around Aria, his body rigid with fury and a chilling dread. "He's been watching us all along." Lucian convened an emergency council meeting in the war room. The mood was grim. "Scouts report Aldrich has amassed an army," Caspian reported, pointing to a large map of the surrounding territories, over 500 rogues, plus at least another 200 warriors from the packs he's conquered. They are on the move. His target is clearly us. "We need allies," Marcus stated, his scarred face set in hard lines. No one will stand with us against Aldrich, Elena countered. He has killed 7 alphas in the last decade. The other packs are terrified of him. Then we will make them listen, Lucian declared, his voice ringing with authority. I will go to the Alpha Council. Caspian looked shocked. Alpha, the Council turned their backs on us after your father's death. They called it an internal dispute. They will not help. This is different, Lucian insisted. Aldrich doesn't just want territory anymore. His message is clear. He's making a play for the title of High Alpha. He wants to rule the entire continent. That makes him a threat to all of them. Then I'm going with you, a quiet but firm voice said from the doorway. Aria stepped into the room, her chin held high. Absolutely not, Lucian said instantly. It's too dangerous. And it's more dangerous if you go without me, she argued, meeting his gaze without flinching. They need to see me. They need to hear from the daughter of Aldrich Shadowfang that I stand with you. With Black Moon, it's the only way they'll believe the threat is real. It's the only way they'll be convinced to fight. He wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Her presence would be more powerful than any speech he could make. Their destination was Highland Summit, a remote, ancient castle nestled in the highest peaks of the Rocky Mountains, the neutral ground where the council convened. Their small, heavily armed party traveled for 2 days. During the journey, under a blanket of stars one night, Aria and Lucian found a moment of peace. Are you afraid, she asked him softly, to face the people who abandoned you? He pulled her closer, his arms a circle of warmth and strength around her. The only thing I'm afraid of in this world is losing you, he murmured against her hair. Everything else is just noise. The Alpha Council chamber was an intimidating place, a circular room of dark stone where 5 throne-like chairs were carved into the wall. 5 of the most powerful werewolves in North America regarded them with cold, calculating eyes. There was Thorn, the eldest, his face a roadmap of wisdom and caution. Kale, young and hot-headed, who viewed Lucian with open hostility. Morgana, the only female alpha, sharp, beautiful, and enigmatic. Darius, brutal and pragmatic, who cared only for his own pack's advantage. And Rowan, a peaceful alpha who looked deeply troubled by the news they brought. The debate was fierce. Why should we risk our warriors for Black Moon's feud? Kale sneered. 10 years ago, Lucian was too weak to protect his own family. How can we trust him to lead an army? Before Lucian could respond with the violence brewing in his eyes, Aria stepped forward. Because if you don't, Aldrich will not stop with us, she said, her voice clear and strong, echoing in the stone chamber. He will come for your territories, your packs, your families, one by one, until every wolf on this continent kneels before him. Morgana arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, and we are supposed to trust the word of his daughter. I did not choose my father, Aria replied, her gaze sweeping across the 5 alphas, unwavering, but I choose where I stand, and I stand with Lucian Blackmoon. The room fell silent. Finally, Alpha Thorn, the ancient leader, spoke. Words are wind. If you want our allegiance, Lucian Blackmoon, you must prove your strength. Defeat one of our champions in combat. Kale smirked. Rising from his throne, I will fight you, Lucian. No. The single word came from Aria. Every head swiveled in her direction. I will fight, she declared. The chamber erupted in disbelieving murmurs. Lucian stared at her, his eyes wide with alarm. What are you doing? He sent to her through the bond, his thought laced with panic. I have to prove myself, she sent back, her own thought clear and resolute, not just to them, but to our pack, to myself. Trust me. Thorn considered her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. Your opponent will be Kale's beta, Ragnar. A giant of a man, with arms as thick as tree trunks and a wild, blonde beard, stepped forward into the center of the room, which served as a combat arena. He looked at Aria with something akin to pity. Lucian's voice was a low, desperate whisper in her mind. Aria, if he hurts you. She turned and gave him a small, confident smile, silencing the rest of his panicked thought. Then you'll feel it, and you can come save me, she whispered aloud. But I don't plan on letting that happen. Ragnar, Kael's beta, cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing in the tense silence of the chamber. He was easily 7 feet tall, a walking mountain of muscle and battle scars. My apologies in advance, little lady, he rumbled, his voice a gravelly bass. I will try not to make this too painful. Don't hold back, Aria replied, her voice steady. She centered herself, remembering Marcus's relentless training, the endless hours of drilling footwork and blocks. Ragnar charged, his speed utterly shocking for a man his size. He was a blonde blur of fury, but Aria's senses, heightened by her own latent power and amplified by her bond with Lucian, were screaming at her. She moved, not with conscious thought, but with pure instinct, ducking under a punch that would have taken her head off. She spent the first few minutes on the defensive, a whirlwind of dodges and blocks. She used her smaller size and agility to her advantage, letting Ragnar's immense strength work against him. But he was too strong, too experienced. A glancing blow caught her in the ribs, and she gasped, pain exploding in her chest. From the sidelines, she could feel Lucian's panic and rage through the bond. He was physically restraining himself from leaping into the arena. Stay strong. My love, you can do this. His voice echoed in her mind, a warm current of energy that pushed back the pain. Ragnar, seeing her falter, moved in for the finishing blow. He raised a fist the size of a small boulder. Time seemed to slow down as the fist descended. A flash of an image, a memory that was not her own, bloomed in her mind. She saw a beautiful woman with golden hair and a kind smile, Serena. Aldrich's first mate moving through an ancient fighting form, her body wreathed in golden light. Without thinking, Aria mirrored the movement. Golden energy, raw and untamed, erupted from her, wrapping around her like a second skin. She sidestepped Ragnar's punch with impossible grace and spun, delivering a powerful, energy-infused kick to the back of his knee, the weak point Marcus had taught her to target. There was a sickening crunch, and the giant warrior roared in pain, collapsing to the ground. He glared at her, stunned, before pushing himself back up, ready to fight on despite his injury. Enough, Aria said, her voice ringing with newfound power. She held out her hand, palm forward, and focused her will. A wave of pure kinetic energy, visible as a ripple in the air, shot from her hand. It wasn't a destructive blast, it was a solid wall of force. It struck Ragnar in the chest and sent him flying out of the combat circle, where he landed in a heap at his alpha's feet, stunned but unharmed. The entire council was on its feet, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. That is primal alpha power, Thorn whispered, his ancient eyes wide. There is no mistaking it. Morgana's gaze was sharp, calculating. She is stronger than most of us in this room. If Aldrich were to ever fully unbind her power, she could become one of the most powerful alphas on the continent. Rowan finished, his voice filled with wonder. Kael, for his part, looked at his defeated beta, then back at the small woman glowing with golden light. He swallowed his pride and gave a stiff, reluctant nod. I concede, the alliance is approved. The moment the fight was declared over, Lucian was at her side, wrapping her in his arms and lifting her off her feet. You make me proud enough to go insane, he whispered fiercely into her hair, his voice thick with relief and adoration. She sagged against him, the adrenaline leaving her weak and trembling. I promised I wouldn't let you down, she murmured, burying her face in his neck. In front of the entire Alpha Council, he kissed her, a deep, possessive kiss that was a public declaration of their bond, their love, and their united strength. The council agreed to commit 1,000 warriors to their cause. The plan was forged. They would meet Aldrich's army head-on in 5 days, in a neutral territory known as Blackstone Valley. The battle would take place on the night of the blood moon, a lunar event that amplified the power of all werewolves to its peak. Miles away, in a makeshift war camp, Aldrich Shadowfang stared at a faded photograph of a young Sarah holding a smiling, toddler-aged Aria. "My daughter is strong now," he said to the empty tent, his voice a low growl. "Good. I would not want to reclaim a weakling." He looked up, as if seeing a ghost in the shadows. "Do you see? Serena, our child, will carry on our legacy, and the Black Moon clan. They will pay for their sins with blood." An aide entered the tent, his body trembling. "Alpha, a report from the summit. Black Moon has forged an alliance with the council." Aldrich let out a low, cold laugh that held no humor. "An alliance I have shattered one council before. I can certainly shatter another." The Black Moon Manor had transformed into a military command center. The air was thick with tension and the scent of sharpening steel. Warriors from the allied packs had arrived, their presence swelling the ranks and turning the once peaceful grounds into an armed camp. Through it all, Aria could feel Lucien's stress as a constant, low hum through their bond. He was a commander preparing for the fight of his life. On their last night before they were to march to Blackstone Valley, he took her hand and led her away from the chaos. He brought her to a hidden place deep in the territory, a place she had never seen before, the Moon Lake. It was breathtaking. A perfectly still lake reflected the rising moon like a silver mirror. The water so clear she could see the smooth stones on the bottom. The air was still and sacred. "This is where every Black Moon Alpha has brought their Luna to complete the bond," Lucien said, his voice quiet and serious. "I wanted to bring you here, before everything changes." "Are you scared?" she asked, turning to face him. He looked down at her, his amber eyes soft in the moonlight. "I'm not afraid of dying, Aria. I'm afraid of a world without you in it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple silver ring, intricately carved with the intertwining symbols of a wolf and a moon. It was old, worn smooth by time. "This was my mother's," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She gave it to me before she died and told me to give it to my mate." He took her hand and slid the ring onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. "Aria, whatever happens in the battle to come, I want you to know that you are the reason I believe in hope again. You are the light that ended a decade of darkness for me. You are my everything." He took a deep breath. "After this war is over, I want to hold a proper Luna ceremony for you. But right now, I have to ask, will you be mine? Not by fate, but by choice." Tears of pure joy streamed down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, today, tomorrow, and forever." Then, following the most ancient of traditions, he completed their bond. He leaned down, his lips brushing against the sensitive skin where her neck met her shoulder. He hesitated for a second, then his teeth gently scraped her skin. It was a sharp, brief pain that was instantly consumed by a wave of intoxicating pleasure. A searing heat spread from the mark through her entire body. In the moonlight, a faint, glowing silver tattoo of a wolf's head appeared on her skin. Then, empowered by the alpha blood awakening within her, she did the same to him, marking him as her own. The moment her teeth broke his skin, a blinding wave of energy exploded between them, knitting their very souls together. The bond was complete. Now, they were truly one. They could hear each other's thoughts as clearly as spoken words, feel each other's pain, share each other's strength. They stayed by the lake until dawn, wrapped in each other's arms, whispering dreams for a future they weren't sure they would have. "When this is over," Lucien murmured, "I want to show you the world. Paris, Tokyo, the Great Pyramids, anywhere you want to go." "Anywhere is fine," she whispered back, As long as I'm with you. I want a family with you, he said, his voice soft and filled with a longing that made her heart ache. Children with your eyes and your kind heart. And your stubbornness, she teased gently. No, he chuckled. They can have your strength instead. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and orange. The beautiful, peaceful moment was shattered by Caspian's voice, projected telepathically to his Alpha. Alpha. The scouts report Aldrich's army has left their camp. They will reach Blackstone Valley in 2 days. Lucian pulled her tighter against him, his moment of peace over. Our time is up. While love and unity were being solidified at the Moon Lake, resentment was festering back at the manor. Celine. Her jealousy and ambition curdled into treason, gathered a small group of 15 disgruntled warriors in the shadows of the armory. That Luna will be the death of us all, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. She is Aldrich's flesh and blood. How do we know this isn't all an elaborate trap? But the Alpha has marked her, one of the warriors argued nervously. The Alpha is blinded by the mate bond Celine shot back. He can't see clearly. We have to protect the pack ourselves. Her plan was simple and treacherous. During the chaos of the battle, they would seize Aria and use her as a bargaining chip, forcing Lucian to surrender to Aldrich to save his precious mate. But they weren't as secretive as they thought. Kira, passing by on her way to the kitchens, overheard the last part of their treasonous plot. Her face went pale with horror. She didn't confront them. She ran. She found Caspian and Elena and spilled the entire story. Minutes later, Caspian, Elena, and Marcus cornered Celine's group as they were leaving the armory. Treason is punishable by death, Celine, Caspian said, his voice cold and hard. Celine didn't flinch. I'm doing what's right for this pack. She will destroy us. No! Aria stepped out from behind Marcus. She had heard everything. She walked forward, her steps measured and confident. She was no longer the timid human who had stumbled into their world. She was a Luna, and for the first time, she truly looked and sounded the part. Her voice, when she spoke, carried an authority that made even Celine pause. I understand your fear, Celine, Aria said, her voice devoid of anger, filled instead with a surprising empathy. I'm scared. I'm scared I'm not strong enough. I'm scared of failing the people I love, but I will not run, and I will not betray my pack. She looked Celine directly in the eye, so I am giving you a choice. You can fight beside us as a loyal member of Black Moon, or you can leave this territory right now and never return. But if you stay, and you dare to betray this pack, I promise you, I will be the one to strike you down. Celine was stunned into silence, taken aback by the sheer force of will radiating from Aria. One by one, the warriors who had been with Celine dropped to one knee, their heads bowed. Forgive us, Luna, one of them choked out. We will fight for you. After a long, tense moment, Celine, her face a mask of conflicted emotions, slowly, reluctantly, knelt as well. Lucien appeared in the doorway. Having watched the entire exchange, a look of immense pride was on his face. He walked to Aria's side, placing a hand on her shoulder in a public show of absolute support. You have heard your Luna, he announced to the assembled warriors. We fight as one, or we die as one. That evening, Aria stood before the entire combined army. She gave her first address as Luna, her voice ringing with passion and conviction. I know many of you still doubt me, she said, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. It is true that I carry the blood of Shadowfang, but I am not my father. My name is Aria Blackmoon. I am the mate of your Alpha, and I am the Luna of this pack. Her voice rose. Tomorrow, we fight not just for territory, but for our families, for our future. And I swear to you, I will fight beside you, and I will die for you if I must. A single wolf howled, and then another, until the entire army erupted in a deafening roar of approval. chanting her new title, Luna, Luna, Luna. For the first time since she had arrived, Aria felt completely and truly home. The celebration was cut short by a scout. A lone rider approached under a banner of truce, carrying a message. It was a rolled parchment, sealed with the Shadow Fang crest. Lucian unrolled it. "Meet me at the Stone Blade at midnight, alone. I would speak with my daughter, Aldrich." "It's a trap," Lucian snarled. "Or it's a chance," Aria countered, her mind racing, a chance to understand him. Maybe I can convince him to stop this. "I will not let you go alone." "Then we go together," she said, her decision made. The Stone Blade was a jagged rock formation that jutted out from a cliff face, marking the halfway point between the Black Moon lands and the Neutral Valley. Aria and Lucian stood on the precipice, the wind whipping their hair. Caspian and Elena were hidden in the rocks nearby, ready to intervene. Aldrich Shadowfang emerged from the opposite side of the clearing. He was exactly as he had been in her nightmares, tall and powerfully built, with long silver hair that gleamed in the moonlight, and his eyes, they were her eyes, the same shade of gold, but his were filled with a deep, ancient sorrow and a cold, chilling fury. "My daughter," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. His gaze was complex, a mixture of pride, pain, and something that looked disturbingly like ownership. "You have grown into a beautiful woman, just like your mother." "Why did you summon me?" Aria asked, her voice shaking but firm. "Did you come to kill me?" A sad, humorless smile touched his lips. "Kill you, Nomber child. I have come to take you home, to your rightful place, by my side." "She is already home," Lucian growled, stepping forward protectively, "with me." Aldrich's gaze shifted to Lucian, and the temperature seemed to drop by 20 degrees. "Black Moon, the son of my enemy. You dared to mark my daughter." "She is my mate," Lucian snarled, "a destiny decreed by the goddess herself." "Destiny can be rewritten," Aldrich said coldly, "and I will break your bond." "Enough," Aria shouted, stepping between the two titanic alphas. Her own power flared, a faint golden aura shimmering around her. "I am not a prize to be won." She turned to Aldrich. "You want me to come with you. Give me a reason. Why did you murder Lucian's family? Why did you drive my own mother to flee from you?" A spasm of pain crossed Aldrich's face. "You don't understand," he said, his voice raw. "This world is cruel. The weak are devoured. I was once weak, and I lost everything. My mate, Serena, and our unborn child were murdered by human hunters. I begged the other alphas for aid. They all turned their backs on me." Thaddeus Blackmoon, Lucian's father, was the loudest voice against me. He said it was my problem, and he refused to get involved. So I became strong. I became the power they could not deny. And when I came for justice, Thaddeus stood in my way, so I killed him. "You lie," Lucian roared, his own pain and rage boiling over. "My father never turned his back on anyone in need. You were a madman, slaughtering innocents. You killed my 12-year-old sister." "The girl was an accident," Aldrich said dismissively, "a casualty of war. She should not have been on the battlefield." "Accident," Lucian bellowed, the wolf within him fighting to break free. Aria threw up a wall of golden energy, physically stopping Lucian from charging. "Stop, both of you!" She turned on her father, her eyes flashing with a righteous fury. "You lost your family, and my heart breaks for that. But that does not give you the right to destroy others. My mother ran from you because you were no longer the man she loved. You let your pain turn you into a monster. You don't understand." "No, you are the one who doesn't understand," she cried. "I lost my family too. I grew up alone, never knowing who or what I was. But I didn't use that pain as an excuse to murder and conquer. I chose a different path." Tears streamed down her face. "You are my father, Some part of me wants to know you, to love you, but you have done unforgivable things." Her voice dropped to a desperate plea. "So I am begging you, as your daughter, stop this. Don't make me face you on the battlefield. Don't make me choose between you and the man I love." For a fleeting moment, a flicker of humanity, of the man he once was, appeared in Aldrich's eyes. He looked at his daughter, so much like her mother, so much like his beloved Serena. "If I stop now, I lose everything," he said quietly. "My empire will crumble. My enemies will tear me apart. I will be weak again." He looked at her with a renewed, desperate intensity. "But with you by my side, together, we could rule. We could build a world where no one could ever hurt our family again." Aria shook her head, her decision made. "No, I will not rule through fear. I have chosen my path. I will stand with Lucian. We will protect the weak, not prey upon them." The light in Aldrich's eyes died, replaced by an icy resolve. "Then you have chosen to stand with my enemy." He turned to leave. "Tomorrow, on the battlefield, I will not hold back. If you stand with Black Moon, you will die with them." He paused at the edge of the clearing and looked back at her one last time. "You were told your mother died of sickness when you were 5, weren't you?" Aria nodded numbly. "That was a lie. I found her. She tried to stop me from taking you. So I killed her." The cruel, final words struck Aria like a physical blow. She collapsed, her legs unable to hold her. Lucian caught her, pulling her into his arms, his own face a mask of pure, murderous hatred as he watched Aldrich disappear into the night. "I will kill him," he vowed, his voice a low, deadly promise for what he did to my family and for what he has done to you. Dawn broke over Blackstone Valley, painting the sky in bloody shades of red and orange. The Allied forces, 1,300 strong, stood in disciplined ranks on one side of the vast, open plain on the other. Aldrich's army of 1,000 rogues and conquered warriors seethed like a tide of pure malice. Lucian, in his human form but radiating an aura of barely contained power, stood at the head of his army. Aria was at his side, her hand in his, a beacon of golden light in her white fighting leathers. Aldrich's voice, amplified by his own alpha power, boomed across the valley. "Black Moon, surrender my daughter to me, and I will let the rest of you live." Lucian's reply was a deafening roar that shook the very ground. "Come and get her!" And with that, the battle began. The two armies crashed together in the center of the valley with a sound like thunder. It was a maelstrom of fur and steel, of guttural snarls and screams of agony. Lucian, shifting into his massive black wolf form, was a whirlwind of destruction, tearing through the enemy's front lines. Aria remained at the rear, a combat medic of immense power, her golden energy flowing from her hands to mend grievous wounds and give strength to faltering warriors. For the first hour, the battle was a stalemate, but then Aldrich entered the fray. He shifted into a wolf form that dwarfed even Lucian's. He was a monster of silver-gray fur and burning red eyes, a living embodiment of grief-fueled rage. He carved a path of death through the Allied ranks. Alpha Rowan tried to stop him and was swatted aside. Mortally wounded, Alpha Darius charged him head-on and was killed instantly, his throat ripped out. Panic began to spread through the Allied forces. He was unstoppable. Lucian met his charge. The two great alphas collided in a battle that was both epic and deeply personal. They were a blur of black and silver, claws and teeth, each blow powerful enough to shatter bone. But Aldrich was older, more ruthless. He caught Lucian with a sweeping claw that tore open his chest, sending him flying backward. "You are still just a boy, playing at being a king," Aldrich snarled. Seeing Lucian fall, something inside Aria broke. The dam holding back the full force of her power shattered. A tidal wave of golden energy erupted from her, and she charged into the battle, creating a shimmering wall of force between her father and her mate. "I don't need you to unseal my power," she screamed at Aldrich, her eyes glowing with a terrifying light. "I can do it myself." She fought him, father against daughter. He held back, not wanting to kill her, only to subdue her, but she fought with the desperate fury of someone protecting their entire world. Then, betrayal struck from within. Celine, her face twisted with a final, desperate act of jealous rage, saw her opportunity. While Aria was locked in combat with Aldrich, Celine charged her from behind, a silver dagger in her hand. "Aria, look out!" Kira screamed, throwing herself in the path of the blade. The dagger plunged deep into Kira's side. Aria shrieked, her concentration breaking. Enraged, Lucian was on Celine in an instant, ending her life with a single, brutal snap of his jaws. But the moment of distraction was all Aldrich needed. He lunged, not with a killing blow, but a disabling one. His claws, sharp as razors, raked across Aria's chest. From her shoulder to her ribs, the pain was excruciating. She collapsed, the world fading to black, the ground soaking up her blood. Aria, Lucian's roar was a sound of pure, soul-shattering agony. Seeing his mate fall, seeing her blood staining the earth, the last vestiges of Lucian's control evaporated. The man was gone. The alpha was gone. Only the primal, ancient beast remained. His body began to contort and expand, growing to an impossible size, his fur becoming as black as the void, his entire form radiating an aura of terrifying, dark energy. He had unleashed his primal alpha form, a power not seen in centuries. He rose to his full, monstrous height and let out a roar that stopped the entire battle. Every wolf on the field, friend and foe alike, was forced to their knees by the sheer power of it. Only Aldrich remained standing, his eyes wide with a flicker of true fear. Lucian's voice was no longer human. It was a deep, echoing sound that came from the earth itself, the voice of a vengeful god. "You dare touch my mate." Aria drifted in a space between worlds, her consciousness untethered from her bleeding body. The pain was gone, replaced by a serene, white emptiness. Two figures materialized before her out of the light. The first was her mother, Sarah, her face young and beautiful, her smile filled with a gentle, loving pride. "My child, I'm so proud of the woman you have become." The second was the woman from her visions, Luna Serena, Aldrich's first mate. Her expression was one of sad compassion. "You are the only one who can save him," Serena said, her voice like soft bells. "You can save Aldrich from the darkness that consumed him." "But he's a monster," Aria whispered. "He's killed so many." "He was not born this way," Serena replied. "His heart was broken. Show him that love is a greater power than hatred." Back in the valley, the primal battle raged. Lucian, in his terrifying godlike form, was systematically destroying Aldrich. He was no longer fighting with skill, but with pure, unstoppable force. He slammed Aldrich to the ground, his massive jaws closing around his throat, ready to deliver the final, killing bite. "End it!" Aldrich rasped, ready to accept his fate. But on the edge of the conflict, Aria's wound began to glow with a golden light. Her alpha healing, now fully awakened, was knitting her flesh back together. She gasped, drawing in a sharp breath, and struggled to her feet. She saw Lucian, about to execute her father. "Lucian, stop!" she screamed, her voice filled with a desperate urgency. He paused, his red-rimmed eyes turning to her. The wolf inside him was still in control, screaming for vengeance. He heard her. He must die. Aria ran to him, ignoring her own pain, and wrapped her arms around his massive, furred leg. She pressed her forehead against him, pouring all of her love, all of her reason, all of her calm into their bond. "I know. My love, I know you're in pain, but if you kill him like this, in pure rage, you will become the very thing you've spent 10 years fighting. You will become him." She felt the struggle within him, the man fighting the beast. "Let me handle this," she pleaded through the bond. "Let me choose our path. For us." Slowly, agonizingly, the primal rage receded. Lucian shrank back down to his normal wolf form, then to the man, who immediately stumbled, exhausted. He pulled Aria into his arms, holding her as if he would never let go. She walked over to where her father lay, broken and defeated on the ground. She knelt beside him. "You have lost," she said softly, "but I will not kill you." Why, he choked out, his voice filled with disbelief. "Because I will not become you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And because some small part of me still hopes that the father my mother loved is still in there somewhere." She looked him in the eyes. "Serena wants you to find peace, not power." Hearing his lost mate's name from his daughter's lips finally broke him. A single tear, the first in decades, traced a path through the dirt and blood on his cheek. "Serena," he whispered, I failed everyone." He looked at his daughter, his eyes filled with a lifetime of regret. "You are like your mother, and like her, kind, strong, everything I lost." He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but let me atone, for one thing." Suddenly, a last desperate group of rogues, fanatically loyal to Aldrich, charged from the side, refusing to surrender. They swarmed toward Aria. With a final desperate surge of strength, Aldrich threw himself in front of his daughter, shielding her with his body. He fought with the last of his immense power, a silver-gray whirlwind of fury, killing all 10 of them. But in the process, he took a dozen fatal wounds, his body pierced by daggers and swords. He collapsed into Aria's arms. "My daughter," he gasped, his breathing shallow. "Live well, better than your father." He looked past her. "At Lucian, Black Moon, protect her. Don't let her suffer." "As I did." His eyes seemed to look at something far away, a peaceful smile touching his lips for the first time. "Serena, my love, I am coming home." And with that, Aldrich Shadowfang closed his eyes and was still. The battle was over. The valley fell silent. Aria wept in Lucian's arms, mourning the father she never knew and the man he could have been. The allies had won, but at a great cost. The bodies of the fallen littered the field. But in the end, a monster had been laid to rest. And in his final moments, a father had found his redemption. Aria held the Shadowfang crest, now hers by blood right, and swore she would use its legacy not for conquest, but for peace.